Hello there, and welcome to the latest review for the King's Square Reviews. This is also going to be for Cyberpunk Edgerunners, episodes 5 and 6. If you like my content here, definitely click that like and subscribe button. It'll be greatly appreciated. And obviously, since I'm discussing episodes 5 and 6, go back and watch the reviews for episodes 1 through 4. Nothing lasts forever, especially in a cyberpunk dystopia like the one found in Netflix's Cyberpunk Edgerunners. Now, after spending the first 4 episodes establishing the world and the setting up of this new crew of cyberpunks, episodes 5 and 6 show the rapid decline of the group. Edgerunner life is violent by nature, and that cannot be overstated, particularly when you add in the over-reliance on cybernetics, and that's where the tragedy of this series up to this point leads to, particularly when we get to the ending of episode 6. Now, obviously, spoilers are ahead, so if you have not watched episodes 5 and 6 of Cyberpunk Edgerunners, turn off this video, go watch those, come back and listen to my take on it. Now, first things first, you've got episode 5, which is titled All Eyes on Me. And that picks up a little bit of time after the ending of the last episode. Maine and the crew of the Edgerunners that David is a part of were looking for a way to kidnap an Arasaka executive named Tanaka, which happens to be the father of Katsuo, David's old classmate from the Arasaka Academy that used to torment David until David got his first cybernetic implant and beat the shit out of him. As it turns out, Tanaka is a patron of an extreme brain dance artist operator named JK, aka Jimmy Kurosaki. And extreme brain dances are some of the more extreme elements that you can find within the cyberpunk universe. David's familiar with JK's XBDs and suggests using JK as bait to lure Tanaka out of hiding, reasoning that an executive of Tanaka's caliber wouldn't want anyone connected to him in the company to know about him picking up these brain dances that are of a questionable nature. And that's part of what extreme brain dances kind of deal in, is that extreme behavior and sensory experiences that you're not supposed to want to indulge in. It just goes to show, though, that David's starting to learn his trade as an edgerunner, and he's contributing to the team's success by making the suggestion. So he's growing into his role, and it's something that's very fun to see. Now, as is the case with all jobs like this, things go pear-shaped very quickly when it turns out that Kurosaki isn't just your average brain dance peddler. He uses an EMP device, as well as having several disturbing eye implants in the back of his head, to disable Maine, Dorio, and David, kidnapping David in the process and making his getaway. Once he's back at his studio, Kurosaki then proceeds to subject David to an extreme brain dance of a cyber psycho going on a full rampage, similar to what we saw at the very beginning of the series in the first episode. What we're seeing here is that Kurosaki intends to drive David insane from too much sensory overload, which is something that can happen with brain dances in the cyberpunk universe. It's only with the timely intervention of both Lucy and Dorio that David is saved, and they manage to capture Kurosaki. There's a very poignant moment, though, when Kurosaki and David are waiting for Tanaka Sr. to arrive. Kurosaki points out, rightly so, that David's use of the Sandevistan implant that he got at the very beginning of the series is going to be the end of him, specifically because David has this tolerance for cybernetics that is outside of the norm. JK, in a very creepy way, illustrates that the more cyberware a person installs, the greater the chances of that person losing their connection to reality. And in a way, they're treating cyberware like a drug addiction in this series, which, if you've looked at the source material for our Telsorian game's Cyberpunk TTRPG, is very apt, and it kind of fits. Now, Given that this advice is coming from JK, David completely ignores it, says that he can handle it, and JK, in return, points out many people have said the same thing, and they still lose themselves to their cybernetics, to this disconnection from reality. And it's a very dire prediction that comes into play in the next episode. But in this case, the crew manages to get a hold of Tanaka Sr. They lose JK in the process, but it does work. This leads into episode 6, titled Girl on Fire, which starts off with a flashback to Maine before his extensive cybernetic augmentations as he's running in the deserts outside of Night City. The rapid decline into cyberpsychosis that occurs in this episode is something very startling to watch, particularly with how the series shows what happens. Maine is slowly losing his grip on reality as he delves into hallucinations about his past, and he enters into a fugue state where he unwittingly knocks out Kiwi, the group's main hacker besides Lucy, just because Kiwi ran into an issue hacking Tanaka Sr.'s cyberware. The look on Maine's face when he comes out of it after knocking out Kiwi says volumes about how far down the rabbit hole of cyberpsychosis he's gone. And it's only towards later on in the episode that we see that when Dorio suggests that Maine downgrades some of his cybernetics to stave off cyberpsychosis, Maine immediately says that's not an option. He's come to rely on this so much to the point that he can't survive without it. Now, due to Maine's screw-up, David and Lucy are called in to dive into Tanaka Sr.'s cyberware, something that Lucy is very much against, and we soon learn why. Lucy's past has been shrouded up to this point, and you get brief glimpses. So things like a very small, quick scene with a group of people connected to a data terminal, which is no doubt used for deep dive net running. And we soon see that Lucy has a deep dive port implanted in the back of her skull, which is not the type of augmentations that you would see a normal Edgerunner have who is a netrunner. This is something above and beyond the norm. David starts to ask about it, but he immediately sidesteps that. He says, no, Lucy's not ready to talk about it. I'm not going to ask that question, which is a smart bit of maturity on David's part. It's very clear, obviously, from this point, Lucy and David have fallen very, very hard for each other. And especially when you see that Lucy demands David to tell her about the work with Tanaka Sr., despite her reservations, and Lucy goes along with it. So it is a somewhat problematic relationship, but at its core is a very sweet connection between these two people. Now, the next part of the episode is Lucy's deep dive into Tanaka Sr.'s cyberware, while Maine is crashing into cyberpsychosis quickly. And Dorio does what she can to keep him stable, but even she realizes that the countdowns started. This slipping into cyberpsychosis is inevitable. Tanaka comes to and manages to have a conversation with David where he outlines that he was the one responsible for getting David back into Arasaka Academy because of David's natural tolerance for cybernetics. Tanaka Sr. rightly points out that his life is over the second the crew gets what they want out of him, since he's seen their faces and the crew knows that Arasaka does not forget a slight against the company. So Tanaka knows his life is forfeit at this point. He's done. It's around this time that Lucy also discovers Tanaka Sr.'s plans for David, which disturb her in a strong enough way that she fries his cyberware, killing him in the process. but that also destroys the jammer that the group had in place to keep Trauma Team from locating Tanaka. Now, with Trauma Team and the Night City Police Department on their way, the crew tries desperately to get away, but unfortunately, they don't make it, and Dorio and Maine get surrounded by the cops and Trauma Team. The added stress of the gunfight proves to be absolutely too much for Maine, and he finally fully succumbs to cyberpsychosis, getting Dorio killed in the process. And you see Maine, who has been such a stalwart character up to this point, completely lose touch with reality. It's heartbreaking. He is one of the main characters at this point and has become a surrogate father figure, older brother for David. I like what Studio Trigger does with showing how terrifying someone like Maine is when they lose control. And in the end, like, he uses gas canisters to give himself, Dorio, and Max Tech, the SWAT team that NCPD calls in to deal with cyberpsychos, a proper Viking funeral. But it's tragic nonetheless. Like, this is the worst possible outcome that could have happened, and everything is shown in crushing detail. And the episode ends without any bluster, any fanfare. David and Lucy are driving away from the scene. David is clutching Maine's cyber arm that came off in the struggle, and he starts to cry. For me, these episodes hit home, both as a viewer and as a creative writer. This fall from grace that David and the crew experience was going to happen at some point, and it was going to be sooner rather than later. And Studio Trigger, I felt, handled that fall exceptionally well. You know, no character is safe in this kind of story, and I commend Trigger for committing to that ideal, particularly since it is a large part of how the Cyberpunk TTRPG works. Tanaka's conversation with David in episode 6 highlights that no matter how strong or chromed out a cyberpunk thinks they are, they still live and operate in the shadow of the megacorporations like Arasaka, who are the real power in this setting. Because Maine and Dorio die, David now has to step up to become the leader of the crew, which is what Lucy has been afraid of in these past couple of episodes. And given what you've seen up to this point, and also Cyberpunk as a whole in its genre form, you know this is not going to end well for David, and it doesn't. That about covers it for my review of episodes 5 and 6 for Cyberpunk Edgerunners. Once again, if you like my content here, definitely check out the link tree in my bio. It has links to all of my stuff all over the web. Also, hit that like and subscribe button. It is greatly appreciated. I'm starting off this channel just trying to get my feet wet and work on these reviews that I've done over the years in written format and put them into video audio format. So just be kind to me, be gentle. I'm just getting started with all of this. But if you like the content, like I said, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It's greatly appreciated. Have yourself a wonderful day.